Clowning around, clowning around. This is just us clowning around. Yeah! Hello and welcome to Clowning Around with me, Emma Stroud. I really hope that you are well, and if you're in the UK, I hope that you haven't melted too much during the current heat wave that we've been experiencing. I hope you've been enjoying it and managing to go outside and at least, drink some cold water. And today, yes, as ever, I'm excited, but I am genuinely, I always am. I always am excited to talk to people. God, who knew? I'm talking to this amazing woman, and today, dear folks of Clowning Around, we are clowning around culture with the brilliant Niki Fuchs. Hello, Niki.
Hi, Emma. How you doing?
I'm good, thank you very much. We are recording this on probably one of the hottest days of the year, aren't we?
We are. I'm sitting here sweltering, and I was asking you earlier whether you were sitting, as I don't know whether I can say, in a cold bath.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you can say, this is Clowning Around. We get to say whatever we want. I mean, Niki did kind of add the prefix of you just sitting naked in a cold bath. And I was like, oh, she knew. So I pulled myself out of it. And I'm now, don't worry, dear listeners, I'm now fully dressed. So you can take that scary image away from you. So Niki, where in the world are you today?
Oh, I'm sitting in the middle of England, a place near Banbury, on top of a hill with glorious views. I am truly blessed. And my husband and family and I have been living in a caravan for the last 2 years whilst we do a house up. So it's a bit like a sauna in here at the moment.
I mean, I can but only imagine. It must just be like, right, don't worry, soon, guys, we're going to have a house. But right now, it's just a hot caravan, But worse places to be in lockdown, I'd imagine, with walks and stuff that you could do.
Absolutely. We have had a very free lockdown, if you can say that. And
yeah.
We've not had to really go anywhere or do anything. We're very, very blessed. We live in a village with a co-op. And as I'm sure many of your listeners have experienced, the local shopkeepers have suddenly become these people that we see for the first time, and we've built relationships with them, and they were truly just not noticed before. So I just think it's been great for local communities, and ours is no different to that. I did a bit of community work helping deliver food and things early on as well. Done our bit and enjoyed being at home with the family.
And it's interesting, isn't it? It's beautiful, because it's that, these different cultures. Oh, see what I've done there? In terms of all, there's community culture, and then there's obviously the workplace culture. And, sometimes these things that make us shift and change is then makes us kind of take a step back and go, how have we been living and how have we set stuff up? But anyway, as ever, I'm already getting far too excited about the things that we're going to talk about before we've done the quickfire quiz. Are you ready, Niki?
Oh...
I don't think I've ever heard somebody respond with quite so much sort of like pain of like, oh God, okay. So we're going to do it, but we're going to do it gently, okay? So I just want you to imagine that you're sitting in a nice, pleasantly warm caravan, and you've got nature around you. Just imagine it. I don't know where I'm getting this idea from. And we're just going to start. And there's only 10, and then we're just going to chat all things culture. So Niki, first question: what animal is culture?
Oh, it's probably a baby gorilla.
Oh, I like that. And I love the fact it's a baby gorilla, Oh, gosh. Oh, there's so many things. No, next one. What does culture mean to you?
Family, care, empathy, morals, ethos, community, consideration, and power.
And I mean, this is why I wanted you to come on Clowning Around, talk about culture, because the business that you and your brother have created, I've never experienced a culture within the people that you have within your team who so embody those words. And we'll come to more of that, no doubt. But this is why I was excited about having you. Why does culture scare you if it does?
Because why does culture scare me if it does? The lack of culture scares me. So not culture, but the lack of culture, and that because it's a living, breathing organism, it can become ill. it can die, but it, on the other side of that, it can be reborn as well.
Yeah.
But it's living and it's breathing. So that's why it scares me.
Yeah. And I think, just as you were saying that, one of the things that I've noticed, sort of working with various different businesses, is that when people set up businesses, they're really conscious, I think, about, right, what's the culture? How do we want it to feel? And then as businesses grow, I think quite often some founders lose sight of that, or investment comes in. And that's when, to me, that's when stuff gets scary, because suddenly everything's shifted. Anyway, I'm going straight into the detail, and this is quick fire, and I'm messing it up as I quite often do, but never mind. When, if you ever have you felt fully in command of culture?
Never.
Yeah.
It's an organism. It has its own life.
Yeah. And it's bigger than any one thing or person, right? Because
Definitely.
of that.
And if it was controlled by somebody, it wouldn't be true culture.
Oh, gosh, that would be dictatorship. Oh, but that's a whole other thing. Who knew that a clown could do political? Just thrown it in there. Just truck in the word dictator. What object is culture?
Oh, gosh. Quick fire. It's something that needs nurturing. So a baby gorilla, a plant.
I love that. Something that needs nurturing. So, and I like the fact, because that's really quite, I like the fact it's like, it's a baby or a baby gorilla, maybe a small human, no, maybe a small animal, but it's something that, and it really makes sense to me. It's an object that needs care.
Yes.
And attention, which is something that I think you are one of the top people that I've ever seen do that, which is why we're having this chat, my dear. If you fully own culture, what happens?
Oh, well, it grows on its own. It becomes self-fulfilling.
Yeah.
It really does.
Yeah. Because then,
like a stick of rock, it's it's the word written through everybody and everything in an organization.
Oh, I like it, especially because yesterday I drove down to go and see, socially distant, a client in Brighton. So I saw some rocks. So it's such a good thing. Oh, who knew?
How did you get there with all the traffic?
It just took time. I just accepted that it was going to take time. I had 2 podcasts to listen to, and I was like, this is fine. And then when I got there, it was one of those things of just sort of watching people sort of on the beach, and they were all very socially distant, so,
really?
and yeah. And but it felt like sort of Victorian Britain. Not that I really know what Victorian Britain feels like, because I wasn't alive, but it just felt like there were loads of Brits sitting on really uncomfortable stones, but having a really nice time, eating rock.
Did you see any handkerchiefs on heads?
I did. I saw one, which was like, there they are. So, perhaps, who knows, one of the good things about COVID might be that we all start using our beautiful country and don't travel quite so much. Anyway, tangents yet again. Oh, Niki, I had a feeling that this quickfire one between you and I might not be that quick, but that's okay. Who makes you think of culture?
Oh, my brother. And my brother makes me think of culture. Obviously, I would say Richard Branson, because for me, he was my earliest professional memory, if you understand what I mean.
Yeah.
So yes, they're who I think of.
Yeah, and it's interesting, and I think with Richard Branson, I think for loads of us, he was doing trailblazing things. Note the word was, and then it's interesting now how Virgin and how the perception of him and his personal brand and culture has been shifted and altered through COVID. And the way that they're responding to it. Whether you think in a good way or a bad way is sort of irrelevant, but it's like, wow, how do we respond to those people that have set up these things and cultures? Anyway, again, tangent. Well on me. What song is culture?
I'm not going to sing it.
Go on.
Okay, so this is just what relates to the question in your mind. So it has no relevance necessary.
Okay.
At all. You are my sunshine.
Oh, you are my sunshine, my only sunshine. That one, yeah?
Yes.
God, who sang that? You see, it's really exciting because I have finally, good dear listeners, I have now published the Clowning Around playlist on Spotify. So You Are My Sunshine, whoever that is by, will now be added to the most eclectic group of songs that I've ever put in a playlist. And I love the fact. And you're right, actually, because when I think about OSiT and I think about the culture that you set up, I do think it's like it does have a light. So it makes sense that you sing that. Not that you sang it, I did. Yeah, I mean, you're welcome to sing it now if you want.
No. I couldn't ruin the podcast so early on, honestly.
It's like, oh yes. So if culture was a country, what country would it be?
Oh golly gosh. Oh, if culture was a country, maybe Bali.
Oh, because
I've been there.
Okay, good reason.
It's multifaceted. It has so many different sides to it.
Yep.
It's warm.
Yep.
It has strong morals. It's a mixed religious place, so but the morals are the same across the board. It's lively, and then it's really serene in other areas. And it has a reputation of people, of the people that visit and engage with the culture, of wanting to go there to be purposeful. And so, yeah, bizarrely, I
mean, for a quick fire answer, now you've just said that, I'm like, of course it's Bali. It wouldn't be anywhere else.
I just convinced myself.
It's like, and this, dear listeners, is why she's good at setting up culture, because she says stuff and you're like, yeah, that is true. But it is, and I think the thing that really resonated with what you just said there was that even though that there's different religions, there is that thread. It is that words in that stick of rock, isn't it?
Yes.
And that, that for me underpins any really good business culture and any sort of good organization culture. And final one on the quickfire quiz, of which we are doing very well at. You're doing extraordinarily well at. I'm sort of
You're doing well, Emma.
Right. Oh, thanks, man. And finally, what, if anything, has stopped you from owning culture?
My own inner fears.
It's amazing, Niki, and it probably wouldn't surprise you that regardless of what I've been, whatever sort of area my guests sort of come and chat to me about, I'd say 95, 96%, it's always the thing that stops them owning the thing that they do own is their own sense of fear.
Isn't that bizarre?
Yeah. And, and everybody that I'm chatting to, they really do know their stuff, whether it was deep coaching, whether it was therapy, whether it was stories, it's always about that sort of our own inner monkeys, for want of a better description, So
imposter syndrome.
You are?
Imposter syndrome.
It is imposter syndrome. And I think it's sort of not only, I think there's the imposter syndrome, but I think that within itself is a way that we sort of talk about things. But I also think underneath imposter syndrome is a deep sort of rooted fear. And I wonder if it's sort of more of a British thing. But then again, I've chatted to Americans as well, of like, if I own something too much, people might think I'm a little bit arrogant. And I wonder if that's part of it as well.
Yeah, I'm sure it has. I'm sure it is.
Don't know. So I've briefly sort of explained that I know a little bit about your world and where you're coming from. So you and your brother, the lovely Giles, you run an organisation called OSiT, so Office Space in Town, which I genuinely do, and I'm not just saying this to be sort of sycophantic, it's like it has a brilliant culture. Has teams, has that always been important to you? Has that always been something that's been one of your big drivers? How did you kind of get to this place, I guess?
I think, as with many people, family has always been very, very important. And surrounding, I don't have millions of friends. I have a few friends who are very dear, who reflect me and I reflect them. And Giles is very much the same as that. And we wanted to enjoy work.
Yeah.
And we wanted the people around us to enjoy it and enjoy being with each other. So although they weren't people they'd chosen necessarily to be with at work, they weren't their friends, but that they were like-minded people that friendships would grow, but they were definitely people they could respect. And so I think they were the drivers behind it.
And so before you and Giles, so how did you end up? What's been your path to end up being whatever your job title is, MD, founder? I don't know. How did you end up here? How's Niki got to this place where she's like, yeah, I've got this business with my brother? Tell us a little bit more about you.
I was really lucky. Really quickly pitted history, salient points. As I said, strong family. My father was an immigrant. My mother was an only child, so they had to be strong and independent. They brought my brother and I up to be very similar to them, to think for ourselves, to make our own paths, that we were responsible for what happened to us, not anybody else. So we always took responsibility. And then moving out of that, we were responsible for all the failures that we had. And between us, we've had a fair few. So I think, and I'm sure you'll agree, challenges make for strong purpose in a good world. And as long as you have people around you and the strength to get up and try again, it's only going to help you. So I think in a nutshell, our journey has been one of love, one of challenges, and one of successes. And success isn't, I'm not talking about monetary success or business success, but the success of picking yourself back up and going, I can still get on and do something. I'm not beaten.
How did you find the strength to do that? Because, as I've sort of mentioned in previous podcasts, I've, as you know, Niki, so I'm just so everybody knows how Niki and I know each other. So we, within my business, well, that's very kind. But we've been clients of OSiT for quite a few years, and I remember when we came across you guys, and I've got this lovely man called Ramon, who I promise you at one point I'm going to get him to come on the podcast. Though he is Mr. Behind the Scenes. So he was looking for an office for myself and Dion. And he used to be in the office world, and so he really knew, and he knew me and Dion, and he literally walked into OSiT in their particular one in Waterloo, and he just went, and he literally phoned us. He came straight out and he went, found it. I was like, why? And he's like, found it. And I was like, why? And he said, well, I just met the receptionist and I know this is the right place. And then we got there, and your buildings are brilliant. They've got Alice in Wonderland theme, you've got happiness themes, you've got the Gentleman Club themes and boat theme, and there's something very special about the way that you've set it up in terms of culture. So that's how Niki and I know each other. And then because I'm fairly loud and gobby, in case you hadn't worked it out, kids, I like talking. So Niki and I got to know each other, and the way that you and Giles have assembled people, and you're right, you've got such interesting and diverse people in your workplace, but there is that thing, that sort of thread going through that rock. How are you doing that? Because I think for the people that are running businesses, this is something, it's like, how do you find those people? What do you do to make sure that culture, as your business has grown, what do you do to make sure that thread through that piece of rock stays?
Well, Giles would say it's because he gets power of veto.
Only siblings can have this kind of thing of like, well, this is why I did it, because I get power of veto. No, you don't.
I think when we interview people, there is a certain level of skill that you need when you're hiring someone. But we're very lucky. We're service-based. It's not very technical. You can teach anyone. Any baby monkey can be taught how to use software and things. So we interview for morals, and because I'm a true believer that in any society, community, disparate religions, if the moral basis is there and you are empathetic and understanding, it doesn't matter if you don't have to want to do what they do. You don't have to agree with everything, but you have to know 100% that the fundamental, that your morals are exactly the same, that your basic belief structure is the same. And if you do, and if you feel like that and you bring together people that feel like that, then they will always work together for the greater good, for their colleagues and for the business. And so when we interview, we are finding out about them as individuals, what their morals are, what their drivers are, what they do in their personal life, what makes them happy, what their purpose is, if they're old enough to have got to that point. So they're the types of questions we ask. And we've done that so often now that it's not down to Giles and I. That ethos and culture, going back to what I said about it being a living organism, is now already driving itself, because our management team do the interviewing and they are asking those questions because it's so important to them. And so going back to your original question, is empowerment. It's the desire to keep control is so strong, isn't it? Because if something works, you don't want it to break, and you're like, if I let somebody else do it, they'll get it wrong.
Yeah.
But it really is ultimately about empowering other people, because it has to be self-fulfilling and self-perpetuating.
And that to me is one of the really sort of important things. And I think as we're coming, wherever we're at in terms of this, what's going on with COVID and Brexit, because we're UK-based folk, it's that thing of, for me within business right now, it's never been more important that founders and entrepreneurs and CEOs, regardless of the size of the business, are very clear about what it is that they stand for and the way that manifests, because it's those businesses that have that very strong moral compass that I think will end up surviving and then thriving throughout all of these challenges, and this is a small, right now everything seems very because there's so many things going on, but in terms of history, this will just be a short blip in human life. And actually I think what you've done, which I think is really interesting, is like, actually you've set the foundations, because what you're doing is you're getting people because they're fully in. And as you know, one of my big drivers is, I think in business, people are very scared about being fully themselves. And actually your culture and the way that you're setting it up is very much about, we want you to be all of you and bring all of your differences, because underneath we've got that baseline. Is that fair?
Absolutely. If you just had people who were mirror images of each other, your business would never grow and develop and change, and you wouldn't get that creativity. And so no, absolutely, Emma, you're 100% right.
And it's amazing as well, and obviously, we're, fortunately now living through this time of Black Lives Matter. And so, diversity and inclusion is being talked about more than it ever has been. But it's interesting to me because that's always been there, because your culture has always been, well, we're humans first. And so therefore, if we're humans first and we all have that same sort of driver, then how it manifests is going to be different, because we're all different, whether we're man or woman or white or black or straight or whatever other sort of difference you can think of. And when you're now looking at your family, when you're looking at your OSiT family, and you're watching this sort of manifest for you in terms of, oh goodness me, that manager is now employing that woman because she's brilliant and da-da-da-da-da. How does it make you feel?
Cheesy grin on my face and my heart could burst. I mean, without going out on a tangent, obviously during the lockdown and things, we've had to do a lot online. And the general managers, our managers that run our buildings, have, not necessarily had the physical presence of Giles or I or any of the other board directors on the board. And they just watching them, even now after all these years, continue to grow and flower and as you can tell, I can't even put it into words. I'm sure if in a special light, I would just be beaming radiance.
And it is true, dear folks, it is true. Like when, sometimes you just sort of pop in and you see Niki at, when you're coming and visiting like Waterloo or whatever, and you do generally have a smile on your face sort of 80% of the time. It's like, ta-da! How has this happened? And I think, it's that. And, for me, as you know, one of my big drivers is that we need to laugh and we need to play, because actually if we're doing both of those things, we will be more productive, we will be happier, and we will be more successful. And with you, do you think part of your setting up culture for you as the leader, is it that you naturally fall into quite a coachy? Is that kind of your way of leading?
Well, I don't have any coaching skills or anything. I think I'm not qualified in any area. I'm not educated at degree level. So I have, no professional skills to speak of. But I think I'm a listener. And so, yes, that's the role. So, I can pick up on whatever's going on. So if it's bouncing off the walls with excitement, then I will mirror that. And if there's an underlying issue or there's some undercurrents, then I'll pick up on that, and I'll dig a little and take it away and get it resolved with them quickly. So I think I add to the individual centres in that way.
It's me, it's Barbara. Oh, it's so lovely to hear from you. Oh, I knew I was going to like you because, well, you just sound brilliant and I like caravans. I do. I really like caravans. You see, it's funny that you should say that you're a listener because I was thinking about the culture that I've got at Brian's. Now, Brian's is my cafe that I run with my husband, by the way. And so I was thinking about it there. And you know what? I think Brian's a bit of a listener because, well, you see, because I like chatting quite a lot. And actually, if I think about it, Brian doesn't get to talk that much. So, I wonder if we're quite similar because, but you're not like me. You're probably more like my Brian because he doesn't really like, I don't really give him that much of a chance to talk. Do you think I should maybe listen a little bit more? Do you think that would help? What do you think, Niki? Do you think that would help me set up the culture? Because then maybe we could go from not only having Brian's, we could then maybe also, we could have oh my God, we could have a different one. We could have Brian's and Barbara's. Oh my God. I knew, you see, talking to you, you're already helping me set up a new culture. What do you think, Niki? Do you think that's a good idea?
I think your energy is essential to the culture of Brian, whether your name's on it or not.
Oh my goodness, I'm going to go and tell Brian. I'm going to say, right, we've got Brian's and we're doing very well, Niki, because, I've been saying, so we've been selling bacon sandwiches on the bridge outside Brian's, and we've now got chairs outside, so we've been doing very well. So you know what? I think we could probably set up a new business, and so we could have Brian's and Barbara's, and then we've got two different businesses, and then I could set up a culture, and then suddenly I could take over the world with bacon butties. Oh, you're brilliant, Niki. Right, I'm going to go off and go and tell Brian. Bye-bye. I mean, you've just literally inspired her to set up another business. Wow, this is how good you are, Niki.
I'm exhausted.
Well, you were just saying that in essence you're an empath, that you're hearing all of this in terms of your culture and stuff. But does it sort of making you really sort of proud? And I do see the sort of the pride in terms of the team and the fact that it's now grown and it's bigger than just you and Giles. Do you find yourself sort of consciously spending time cultivating the culture there? Is that kind of what you're now predominantly doing in your role?
No. I spend my time helping the individuals within the business to be the people that they want to be, and whether that's not about focusing on how they can help us as a business. That's about focusing on them as an individual, with their personal lives, helping them find the thing in life that's going to give them, I don't want to use purpose, Emma, but that's going to make them excited, the thing that's going to get them up in the morning. And ultimately that's not necessarily going to be work. So I try and spend my time with them working around that, and then just being a sounding board when they have a problem at work and helping them resolve it.
You see, I love the fact that your answer, I knew you were going to say that. I love the fact your answer is like, no, I don't spend my time purposely on the culture at all, because this is so your zone of genius that what you've just then said is exactly you spending time on the culture, because you're working with people and you're helping them in that individual way. And this is what I find really fascinating. So I think I might have mentioned it in a previous pod. There's a really good book by a guy called Gay Hendricks, and it's called The Big Leap. And in essence, what he describes is that we all operate in our various zones, and we should ideally be aiming to operate in our zone of genius. And when we're in our zone of genius, everything sort of flows, and it's the place where there are other people that could be doing it similar, but it's where everything kind of operates and you don't even really notice what it is that you're doing because it's just what you should be doing. And that for me is your zone of genius. And I love the fact you don't even sort of even see it as that, because it's that nurturing, that support, that care, that courage to spend time on them as wholes as people is why you have the culture that you have.
Okay.
I love that. She's like,
You
okay,
say so.
maybe if that's the case, So you mentioned Richard Branson earlier.
Yeah.
Are there other businesses and other cultures that whether, you know, some of your clients, are there other or other businesses that you're aware of that you've gone, they've got an amazing culture? What do you sort of look out for with other businesses?
Oh my God, I'm going to sound so ignorant now and go, you know, we're quite introverts.
Yeah.
Well, it's not, we haven't looked outside and said, that's what we want to look like. That's what we want to do. It's very much, it's been a very organic thing. And that,
I think that to me, again, you know, this is a guy that I mentioned quite frequently on the podcast. There's a guy called Daniel Priestley, who I really like. And he's sort of an entrepreneurial thought leader, I guess. But one of the things for me that he always says is like, people get really fixated in doing compare and contrast and looking outward in order to get their ideas and their inspiration. And actually, I'm paraphrasing him very badly here, but what I've taken from what he says is like, actually focus on yourself, be really good and do the things that you are working with, and then business and et cetera, will then flow to you. And I think what you guys have done by focusing on what you and Giles believe really, really important, that's how you've then created the culture that you have. Is that fair?
I think, as always, Emma, you are extremely aware. That's the wrong word, but you always pick up the right strands. Yes, definitely.
Yeah,
I'll take it.
Take it and run with it. Take it and run with it. So if you were to talk to somebody, so let's, you know, make this really relevant, because I think lots of people are thinking, well, maybe, you know, during COVID, maybe I should start up by myself, or maybe this is the opportunity. And, you know, it's a sort of weird time, and it's a weird time to sort of use the phrase opportunity, because if you look at the media, everything is doom and there's nothing good happening in the world at all. But if you were talking to somebody that was like, actually, I want to set up a business and I want to make it really good, what would be your advice? Like, what would be the things that you would maybe say to your younger self of like, this is what's really important to set up a good culture?
Oh, gosh. Well,
the big question. Bum, bum, bum.
Definitely go for it. If you have an idea, don't worry about the outcome. You need to go through the journey. Enjoy the journey, take the journey, get on the train, don't worry about the destination. Enjoy the scenery as you go along. And so that would be my advice to anyone thinking about setting up a business.
Yeah.
You know, be honest with yourself. Don't let people dissuade you. If you feel really strongly about something, you know, I have several memories of when things were going wrong in previous businesses, and I desperately believed I was right, but I couldn't persuade other people. And so I lost belief in myself, and I didn't do and I could have done what I wanted to do, but I didn't make sure it happened. And so if you truly believe in something, do it. Don't be dissuaded. If it's wrong, you'll work it out.
Yeah.
You know, that's the worst thing that can happen. And yeah, there might be disastrous outcomes, but if you don't do it and you were right, they'll be disastrous potentially as well. So, you know, stick by your guns, stick by your beliefs. What else would I say? Make sure you get good sleep. It's essential.
It really is.
Make sure, our family motto, people are sick of hearing this, so I apologize if anyone's heard it before. Our family motto is confer and triumph. And it is essential that you don't just think through what's going on. You have to say it out loud. Yeah. And confer and triumph isn't about going to somebody who you think has more knowledge and experience. It is just the activity of saying it out loud and somebody else listening, because when you verbalize something, your brain kicks into another level, and you will think of other things, and they will ask you questions. If they really are focused on you, they will ask questions. They won't give you solutions, because that's not really what you're looking for. But they'll ask you questions which will stimulate you. So you must speak to anybody and everybody.
I love that.
So I'm waffling now.
No, it's not. It's brilliant.
There are a million other things I could say, but they're the ones that come to mind immediately.
Yeah, and they're brilliant. And I love that whole idea of confer and triumph. I love that, because I think sometimes when people have ideas and they're worried about said outcome, then actually it is getting stuff out of your own head, so that you start to sort of understand the rhythm of what it is that's your idea. And I think people are really fearful of like, but what if? And they sometimes can put too much power on their audience, because it's like, well, if I tell them this and I'm going to go off and I'm going to set this up, and, actually all you're asking is just for what you're very good at, which is listening. It's just like, I just want a sounding board. I don't need advice. I don't need to tell me how to do it, but I just need you just to listen. And actually it's been very smart, I think, about who do you ask those questions to, and just take a moment. I think if you're thinking about setting up your business, take a moment to go, who are the people that I know, or I know people that know, that are really open-minded, that can also sort of help you expand it. Just be wary. I think my one bit of advice on this would be just be very wary about going somebody that's, very risk adverse and very safe. Because if they've never set up their own business and they've always worked at the same job for 40 years, which is completely fine if that makes you happy, speaking to them probably not going to be the best person to speak to if you're being very brave and very vulnerable, until you know that you've got the strength, and you maybe have asked loads of other people, and then you go and ask them and you get a different take. Is that fair? Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And can I just link this back to culture, and just say that the confer and triumph is something that we do with everyone within the business, so that everybody feels as if they have a voice. And again, if you want your culture to take on a life of its own, everybody must feel that they're listened to and can have an influence. Sorry.
No, it's perfect. And it's so important as well. And I remember I was working with a friend of mine. She set up a business and she's now sold it. But one of the things that she did, which I thought was genius in terms of this, she was in healthcare communication business. She's like with their most junior people, and like, most of these were just graduates straight out of university. They would just put them into a project and go and just sort of do an overview, and then we'd literally go, what do you think? And these junior people would be like, I don't know, I haven't got the skill set, don't really know what I'm talking. And they're like, no, what do you think? Because actually the insight that you can have when you've not been in that bubble, and so you've come from university, so you've got a different viewpoint, and it's so important to, as you say, to make sure that everybody that's within your world, within your culture, does feel like they can be listened to, and also that their opinion really matters, because they'll see it through different eyes, and it might not agree with your way, but it's a really important different viewpoint, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So what I'm taking, so to set up really good culture, what I'm taking from this conversation is that you have to get to know people as all of them. So really understand their story and help them understand their story. You have to really listen, and also really make sure that you are in a place where everybody else will listen, so that there's an opportunity for everybody to speak. And also as founders, if you're that sort of, making sure that the way and the energy of a business is written in essence in the DNA, in that stick of rock, so that even when it grows way above the founders and the MDs, that it's so intrinsic to the business that it will just carry on going. Is that a fair summation of how you've set up a brilliant culture within OSiT?
If you say so, Emma. Take it.
I love that. She's like, yeah, I'm not going to say yes or no, but you know what? It'll do. Now, I wouldn't be serving my dear listeners if I didn't get your take just before we wrap up on where do you think, so obviously your business is about office space. What do you think what are you witnessing? What's your sort of take on the UK and how we're going back to work? What's your kind of view on it?
Oh, your listeners might not like me for this. Okay. So I'm a great believer that, this is going to sound a bit weird as a comment, when everyone was worrying about AI, and it was very topical 18 months ago, 2 years ago, I was like, we don't need to worry about it because we're humans and we need human interaction to exist. And so we will find ways, we will reinvent ways to live, and there will be new roles, new businesses that fill that gap between technology and humanity. But it's essential that we remember we're humans and we have to interact. And for me, I think perhaps the easiest way to answer the question about the future of the office, which I guess is what you're asking, is that yes, it might be really cheap for businesses to have their staff working at home, and many staff can work really easily at home and actually don't want to leave the house because that might be their personality type. It might also be their job role. But there are also as many people the other side that love going to work and need the interaction. So there isn't one size that fits all. But for those that don't want to leave the house and therefore, lockdown has been great for them because they can do their job really well and it also fits their personality, it's not good for them. And it polarizes them even more out of society, and reduces their skills for interacting with the rest of society. So they do have to come back into society, and the workplace is really good for them. And those people that love the interaction probably need to spend a bit more time on their admin, and working from home would work really well.
I'm laughing because obviously I fall into that category and I'm like, admin?
Yeah, exactly. Your red, blue, purple and green diary, Emma, I got to fit that admin time in there. So the future of the office for me is bright. I think as long as companies focus, and you'll remember this, people, planet, profit, don't think about the bottom line, think about your people. And just because they say, I want to work from home, it's great for me, doesn't mean that's right for them. And just as those people that go, no, I want to be in the office 24/7, that's probably not necessarily right for them. So the future of the office is fine. It's going to change and develop as it already had been. It's going to continue to look different. It's not rows of desks already. Many workplaces are very different to that. But it will be a place where people purposefully go to be human, to connect, to be creative, to be productive, to have a spark, to grow their culture, to feel part of a community, to feel part of something that is bigger than them. And if companies nurture that, then they will be more successful. So
I really hear you on that. And I think, because I remember I was talking to Dr. Amina on a previous episode, and and she and I were talking about deep coaching. And one of the things that we discussed was the fact that we've all fallen into this rhythm and this trap that we have to, go to work at the same time on a tube and then get to an office and then stare at a computer. And she said, one of the things that she hopes that happens is that actually business owners in particular and CEOs understand the power of community, and then also understand the power of us being together for exactly all those reasons that you've just said. But actually it's a perfect opportunity for us as business leaders to kind of go, well, actually, maybe we don't have to do that 9 to 5 thing. Maybe we can be smarter than that. And we have this office that we come together and we use it for the sparky, the community, all of those good things. And then we have a day where we can allow more flexible working, but the offices are moved and evolve. And maybe as society, this trap that we'd all fallen into of this is the rush hour, that didn't exist a couple of 100 years ago. It is sort of bonkers when you think about it. And it's like, well, actually you can have, if you wanted to, you can have a beautiful 24-hour culture if that works for you and your business. And you can do things in different ways. And like you say, the office should and could be, and I think probably will be, at the forefront of that evolution. And I wonder, in sort of 50 years time, when we look back on this time, I wonder if sort of businesses will go, God, what were they doing with that 9 to 5 thing? That was weird. But we need that sparkiness, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But imagine a world where your partner does night shifts and you look after, and you get up during the day because that's what you do. Just imagine shifting your day. So actually, I'm just going to live my day at night when my partner's up. I mean, you just, if you consider the day a 24-hour period,
yep.
it really breaks down so many barriers.
Yeah, and I think, beautifully with that whole idea about culturally, it's like, how can we set ourselves up? And, you said sort of very casually, your people, purpose and planet, and then profit will come. And that's one thing that I know is a big driver for you. And I think if we are culturally all thinking about that, because actually people, and especially younger generations coming through, we all want to work in different ways. And lockdown is a forced way of working. But I wonder how we can be smarter to use offices and to use that in engaging in a smart way rather than just doing, well, this is how we've always done it. Yeah. And then we'll all be fine. So, Niki, now, as probably listeners could tell, you and I could chat for ages about everything and go here, there and everywhere. But I'm aware of your time and, of course, my dear listeners' time. So people will be like, what is this office space in town? Pray tell me. So how do people get in touch with you? How do they find out about OSiT?
So office space in town, we're flexible office space providers. We're predominantly in London, but we're also Edinburgh, Cardiff, Northampton, and we are growing. So you'll see us coming to you soon to an office block.
It was going so well until then. Suddenly you went into, this is what we do, but oh no, it's all gone wrong now.
It's all gone wrong. We're on social media, LinkedIn, Instagram, and I don't need to give you my website or my. Do you want my phone number?
No, we don't want your phone number. It's all right. But I will put the website on the show notes so that people can see, because they genuinely are. It's one of those beautiful things, because I think if you are going to be meeting people and you don't want to meet in Starbucks, or you don't want to, and you don't want to go to somewhere that is sort of soulless. The places that you have, because you've got a brilliant designer, which again links into the culture, you've got this brilliant designer that makes all of your different places completely come to life. And so if you are kind of curious, go and look at it. And it's it's a beautiful thing. And they also do cracking parties. So there you go. There's my final tip. They do cracking parties. Niki, thank you so much for being on Clowning Around and chatting to me all about all things culture. I massively appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much for inviting me, Emma. And thank you as always for just making life seem so calm and easy when you're around.
Oh, thanks, lovely. All right, we'll speak soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.
So that was Niki. I mean, she is the master of understatement, and she's very kind in what she said in terms of, yep, if that's what you say, that's true. But, the reason that I really wanted her to come on the podcast was, I think sometimes people do stuff, and as she said, they were, within OSiT, they live within their own bubble. And actually one of the things is that I wanted her to come on the podcast because I actually wanted more people to know about her and also what her and Giles have created, because they really have done something quite extraordinary in terms of the culture that they've set up there. And I hope that you took some stuff away in terms of if you're thinking about setting up your own business, or if you've got your own business already. And for me, culture, especially during challenging times, sort of culture and training and development are quite often the things that, when we're in fear mode, they're quite often the things that we don't pay attention to, because we're like, well, I haven't got time for that. I've got to get on. I've got to make sales. I've got to pivot the business. I've got to do this. I've got to do that. And I'm like, well, yeah, that's all well and good. But actually, in a certain period of time, if your culture's not really good, and if your people haven't had some investment, if you haven't given them some time, and it doesn't necessarily even mean that you've got to send them on really expensive training courses. Sometimes what people just need is time. And I think one of the things that I'm witnessing is that because so much of our lives right now are being driven by fear, we feel like we don't have any time. And actually what Niki is so brilliant at is that she always does create time for all of her team. And so when you look at it from the outside, you'd be like, well, her business has, of course it's been affected. She runs an office business in a time when people haven't been working to offices. But actually her business is carrying on and doing really well because of the time that she puts in with her people. So if you're listening to this and you've got people that you work with, or you work for, now is the time to put time in. And if you're like, well, but I've got a job, that's great. If you've just got, if you've got a job, then I also wonder, are you giving yourself and are you giving other people enough time? Are you creating enough space so that you can actually have really good conversations to check in where you're at. And to check in perhaps where your family's at as well, you know, and it's because culture is bigger than, you know, as Niki said right at the start, it's not only about business culture, which is why I didn't put it as business culture, because it's culture within our families, it's the communities, it's where we're living, you know, that is all culture. It affects how we feel. And listening to her and just sort of thinking about, you know, my own life here, you know, in Southwest London, it's like, you know, during COVID, I've got to know my shopkeepers. I've got to know certain people as I take my dog for a walk, you know, that I have engagements with. And that's all part of the culture and the experience that I'm living through. But interestingly, it's through lockdown, as we gently come out of it, that I have created more time for that, because it has. And I just wonder, as you're listening to this before I sign off, I just wonder if have you been giving yourself enough time to really check in with you? And if you do run a business and you're in charge of a team, are you prioritizing people? Because I think right now, as I stand here in a very hot August day, you know, one of the things that is going to happen as a consequence of COVID is people's well-being, and the time and the fear and the realities and the starkness of what we're all experiencing. So it's really important that we make sure that wherever it is and however you can, contribute to the culture that you are experiencing, you know, rather than just running into a shop and then running out with your mask on and stuff. You know, I wonder how you could engage with that person. Because if we all do those little things, then the culture and the experience that we're all having is surely going to be better, right? Wow, I didn't even know that was going to end up going quite that deep there. Woohoo! That was a moment there. But I do really mean it. And, you know, it's sort of landing with me as I say this. I'm like, yeah, you know, it's carry on with the local, carry on with the community, carry on with the culture that, you know, is keeping me ticking over through this crazy, crazy time that we're living through. Hey, just thought I'd point it out. If you noticed, we've been living through some crazy times, kids. Once again, thank you so much for listening to Clowning Around with me, Emma Stroud. Honestly, you know, you're all doing brilliantly. You know, I'm popping, you're all doing brilliantly. What does that even mean? Who knows? But, you know, I've been getting reviews sort of regularly now, which is splendid. You know, people are sharing it, which I massively appreciate it. And so, yeah, you know, I really do hope that you've enjoyed this episode. I've got, honestly, some bonkersly good people. I mean, it's just, wah! Yeah, that's the response you get from me, get from this clown. So I do hope that you're really well, and have a really good week, and we'll catch up next week. Take good care. Bye.